start with, I believe that this has been a very, very eventful moment, right? And we are living in a moment in which we are really pushing the boundaries of what generative AI is capable of. And while we can see that the innovations that you can prove, the tools for everyday life in crucial fields, uh, these achievements or these advancements are going at a very, very fast pace. And according to many different surveys which are coming up, and it is also creating certain myths, as I mentioned before. The marketing landscape is also undergoing a significant transformation, at least we are, as a practitioner, envisaging. Marketers are trying to push their boundaries with the rapid advancement of the generative AI and ML. It is empowering marketers to create personalized and engaging content at scale, optimize marketing campaigns, and gain deeper insights into consumer and customer behavior. And a big disclaimer, all of us would appreciate that it has to be ethically responsible, right? And we are going to discuss the topics in three buckets in next 1 hour. First, the future, the opportunities that we see across different streams of marketing. The second, the potential pitfalls in terms of the bias in the input data, transparency of the model, the explainability, and nonetheless the over-reliance on automation and what could be the impact of the same, right? And last but not least, we would like to trade off the creativity and the emotions, right? And some of the fear comes out of it, is this going to snatch our creativity and emotions? And the last point, we would request our respective panelists to also throw some light on the challenges that they foresee and what are the kind of solutions that they foresee. And we all should know and appreciate that, we are still, at a very, very nascent stage. So all solutions may not be possible. As we evolve more and more, we see more and more challenges, and of course solutions evolve out of it. So let's start with the opportunities. And my first question is to Chandrasekhar Prasad. We all appreciate that in today's day and age, the content is the king, and generative AI can make a major role in content creation. What do you think? How it will help marketers to think and action with this?
So I would start with AI versus Gen AI. I have seen the hands been raised. So I'll start with what's the difference between when we say AI, but that is artificial intelligence, and Gen AI, that's generative AI. So in old days, AI is actually an old term. It's not a new buzz. In pretty old time, machines were been trained to do some tasks which humans were trying to do. This if you say natural intelligence, it's a parallel to an inverse or whatever you would say. It's for same thing, it's for machine. It's artificial intelligence. So artificial for machines. Now, if I take Gen AI, which is like Gen AI, generative AI, why generative AI and how is it different? So AI was discrete. Discrete means I have to say whether it's cat, it's dog, it's human being, or maybe I can give him a loan or not. What is his score, credit score? What would be the forecasted revenue? These kinds of things were being done with AI. Now with the advent of Gen AI, you can actually create, you can synthesize, and you can create things which are not discrete, which are continuous. For example, you can create text, you can write poetry, you can write book, you can write articles, you can create images, you can create videos. Now this is the beauty of Gen AI, and that's why when OpenAI came with ChatGPT, it was phenomenal. It changed the way AI was being perceived. Initially, it was techie stuff. So people like us used to work on technology and used to predict, forecast, or whatever, do the jugglery behind the scene. Now it's came to the hands of common people like us, everyone. Now you interact, the way you interact with Google, you interact with ChatGPT, you ask, I would like to write an article on, say, Narendra Modi, hypothetically assume, or maybe some particular aspect of something, it will do it. If you want to create an article or maybe say marketing article on something, I want to launch a product X, Y, Z, have some facets A, B, C, and I would target this particular geography, whatever X, Y, Z. It will write a beautiful article. Now, one thing which should be kept in mind, that the beauty of artificial Gen AI is not just the creation. It's pretty great, where it's been trained on huge amount of data. Huge amount of data means, assume I take a book called Atomic Habits, written by someone. If I ask this chat GPT that I want to write a book on atomic habits and give me chapters for those, it will actually spit out what it's been trained on. But if you ask, assume there are too many articles on, say, cricket event happened last time. If you ask ChatGPT about this, assuming that ChatGPT has every recent data points, it will write a beautiful article. If there's a launch of, say, car, say Nissan XYZ, if you ask about that car, it will write amazing article, because it has seen so much amount of data and it's been trained on. Even it's not been trained on, it can synthesize using those articles in a pretty nice way, and it outperforms the humans, and that's the beauty of it. That's one. And the better part is the timing. We used to take days to write or create articles or maybe marketing campaigns or something like this. It has cut down the time to extent that it can be done in minutes, from days to minutes. That's the second beauty. So when this question comes, that what is the advent of Gen AI and how it will help marketing executives? One definitely is the content creation, and second is the go-to-market for the content creation. And if you talk about content creation itself, I mean, if you are not using ChatGPT, please spend some time. Go to OpenAI, openai.com/ChatGPT. It's free. Please spend some time. I mean, it will help you. It will bring you to a new dimension. You will realize that you are missing something in your life. If you are actually in marketing or any other field, just explore what ChatGPT can do for you and in your field, even in your personal life. So that's what my suggestion is. But for marketeers, coming back to marketeers, there are three things, a couple of things which it can do. One is text generation. Second is video generation. Third is audio generation. And apart from this, there is a beautiful incident where Coca-Cola tried to generate an advertisement using Gen AI stuff. And it cut down the time so much that it became a news, person news. It was a big event, and you can search for it, for Coca-Cola, when they created an advertisement with Gen AI. So apart from this, so couple of dimensions. One is definitely the kind of content it can create. Two, it reduces the time. Third is the kind of stuff you can create. And in the marketing, there are three things. One is what kind of campaigns you can create. So campaigns, when you're trying to create a campaign, you have customers at one side and you have communication at the other side. So what can you customize or personalize the communication? That's one thing ChatGPT can do. Even if you have customers' data and transactions data, it will marry. Even it can create content for that. Content for articles. If you are trying to spit out something using some information, even rudimentary, you ask ChatGPT to write article or maybe information about it. It will write something which is amazing. Even if you have many articles, assume you cannot write an article. You have 2-3 articles from your competitors. Take those articles, give it to ChatGPT, and ask, can you summarize it and write an article in your way? It will write article in actually maybe even in your style if you want to train this, if somebody is interested in that. But these are the things, this will help you, at least marketeers I have seen in Mahindra. I work with Mahindra company, and we have created 2 products. One is Mahindra.ai, and second is Mahindra Vision.ai. Mahindra Vision.ai is for images and videos, and Mahindra.ai is for articles and text. So it's a guardrailed product to create, and to take advantage of Gen AI and help our, not just marketing teams, but all the teams, could be legal and all others.
Thank you, Chandra. My next question is to Shakti. Today's consumer, they demand brand to know their choices, right? And you may have already experienced that, the reels that we watch on Meta, or let's say the choices that you get to see on Amazon, the videos that comes on your YouTube or Netflix, it actually reflects your past behavior and choices, right? And consumer actually wants brands also to deliver on their bespoke needs. Hence the personalized marketing is become very, very imperative to win the consumers. So in this context, Shakti, what do you think that, how generative AI can, and ML, actually that's also important, can help and accelerate such experiences?
Sure, thank you for the question. I'll start off, with an example or with an ad that came out in Wall Street Journal in 1997, 26 years ago, where a young man was shown wearing just baby diapers. That was the first time data was used for marketing purposes. I would say one of the first cases. What the analysis, the data scientists or data analysts, what they did was they collected all the sales data and they figured out that when young father go to buy baby diapers, they also buy beer, right? That was like a huge news that there was a full-page article in Wall Street Journal. And what you saw after that was, what the marketers did was they tried to correlate the products that would sell together. So diapers and beer, I'm like, who would have thought that they would sell together? But in this case, now the stores started keeping all these articles together, right? All these products. Similarly, when you have cola on sale, you don't have the orange drink, the Fanta on sale at the same time, because one product is going to cannibalize the sale of the other, right? So a lot of things have come out. Now fast forward 25 years from that time. I want to give you an example where data analytics, ML, and Gen AI came together in a real life case study that was implemented in the travel industry. So here we are talking about the personalized search results. So if I'm looking for a hotel, let's say in London, right? There are like hundreds and thousands of hotels there. What would you want to show on page one? So what we did there was, and we were targeting the B2B customers who are these like small travel agencies, so they are captive customers, and we know exactly who that person is who's doing the search. So in this case, we looked at the historical bookings, and we looked at the search pattern. So whatever was clicked on the web, there's a field called web analytics. So all the clicks were captured, okay? They were combined with the bookings data. So for instance, if someone clicked on a hotel and then looked at the room type, looked at all the facilities that came up with it, it would get some score. If a person just clicked the hotel and then came out of that click, it would get a lower score. So you would build a model like that. That is data analytics, data warehousing part of it. The ML part comes in when you use algorithms like collaborative filtering or hierarchical recurrent neural network, which is actually used by Amazon. Now what this would do is they would identify that for that user, for that city, what are the top 10 hotels that the person is most likely to book, right? And this is based on the past booking and the search behavior. You would now what happens is when the person is doing the search, for example, London or for Dubai, you would see the hotels that are most likely to be booked. And what we saw was the booking from the first page jumped from 15% to 60%, right? So that was a huge win. Now that you know who is buying what hotel, right? That's where the Gen AI part can come in, and now you approach the hotelier and say that we can run promotions for you, and we know who exactly is likely to book your hotel, right? So now once you have this funding, you can go to Gen AI and you can generate customer-specific content. And the content would be an email message, with a very, very unique subject header. And then you can generate images, you can generate video, you can do a lot of stuff using LLM-based Gen AI. And all that was then created, and we had ads. We had published those ads online. We would send emails out. And we saw, a huge response, from our customers, and our bookings actually went up. So this is a case study where regular data analytics, data warehousing, ML-based algorithm, Gen AI-based marketing material actually came together. And how do you use Gen AI? Why would you use Gen AI? And like, where would you use ML? There's a concept called social media listening. What are people talking about your brand? What are they saying about your brand? What are they saying about your competitors, right? You can use techniques like CNN, convoluted neural networks, to analyze images. You can do OCR and then figure out what that particular ad that you're interested in, what does the ad say without you having to go through that ad, right? All these techniques can come. You can do like competitors benchmarking. Once you have all this data from the internet, you can scrape it, you can do sentiment analysis on it, and then you can see how your brand is faring as compared to your competitor's brand. You can also do reputation management in real time. If there is a negative sentiment about your brand, right, you can very quickly identify that there's a negative sentiment, and then you can work on it. So possibilities are endless here. There are a lot of ML techniques, a lot of Gen AI techniques, a lot of natural language processing techniques that can now be used effectively to have very solid and effective ads in the space of marketing.
Thank you, Shakti. Now coming to Divyan, what do you think that how generative AI can help in making content and campaigns hyper-personalized?
So I think a lot of things have already been covered by my previous panelists, but let me just try to bring more flavor of marketing since this is a group or house full of marketeers. All of us have heard about the 4 Ps of marketing, 7 Ps, 5 Cs, and all of those things. But in today's world, the P which matters most is perception. If you will go and see around with the advent of social media and all of those things around attention spans dropping, we really have a very limited portion of time or maybe attention of a consumer that we carry with us for our brand. In order to make the maximum impact in that particular duration, we as marketers have to evolve over a period of time. What kind of campaigns are we showing, to whom, when, at what time? So what are we showing, where are we showing, when are we showing has been existing for quite some time now. There have been, like Chandrasekhar mentioned, that AI versus generative AI, all of these things were obviously part of the traditional AI world as well. But how to sell and what story to sell, that is the power of marketer. How can you generate more and more stories which can be personalized to the customer's need in the falling time of customer attention spans and everything is what makes a brand pull over the other brands. So if we go back in time, maybe 20 years before now, if we talk about 95, 96, that like the sir was mentioning, similar ad or maybe single ad for a brand used to run over months or maybe years. But now, people don't really look forward to seeing the same ad again and again. So the role for a modern marketer is very challenging. How do we create new and new campaigns at that speed at which we can just be in customer's mind, can occupy that mind space? That's where generative AI comes into the picture. How? So the role of creating a campaign starts with generating an exciting copy of the ad or the campaign that you would be trying to show to the customer. While technologies of LLMs that we have spoken about, chat GPTs and all of those things are at disposal of common people that we can use, but there are specialized tools like Jasper.ai, Copy.ai, where you can actually integrate your brand's persona in the communication that you want to create out of it or the copies that you want to generate out of it. How? So we have lots and lots of data that we would have created for our brand from maybe since the time the companies have been existent. How can we feed these things into these tools is where the art of the process lies. Which data to put in, what data to leave out for a kind of campaign that we are trying to create is what a modern day marketer will have to learn. So suppose we have created a copy for an ad. Now the next challenge is how do we reach out to the customers in the most effective manner? With evolution of technology and especially post-COVID, it has been seen that every customer wants to know what is in it for me. There is a need for hyper-personalization and also localization. So that's where again generative AI comes into the picture. I created a copy in English language. Now to translate it into a language of choice which I want to generate a campaign on is again a time-taking activity if we have to do in the traditional way. That's where generative AI comes into the picture, that Can I generate a copy, replicate it over multiple languages and use it for a campaign creation? So content creation we have spoken about in terms of copy. Now, another aspect of marketing or advertisement is static creation. How can I generate statics which can catch customers' attention? And like you were mentioning, reels and all of these social media has become more about multimedia consumption rather than maybe text consumption. That's where tool like Midjourney or Firefly or the Photoshop with generative AI capabilities come into the picture. If we have to create a static in the pre-generative AI world, in the Photoshop world, it really takes a lot of technical expertise to be put in. The person who is working on Photoshop on some idea which was passed on to him or her by a marketer really needs a lot of iterations to arrive at a campaign which can be sent to the customer. That's where tools like Photoshop or with generative AI or Firefly or Midjourney comes into the picture. Putting your idea, which a marketer has in his or her mind, and to see the boilerplate edition of that particular thing, that how this will look. Will it be as attractive as it was looking in my mind or as I was thinking? That's where speed and agility comes up. So these tools bring that kind of flexibility that you can experiment fast, create fast, and maybe reach to the end state much faster than we used to reach in the traditional setup. Talking about hyper-personalization, another aspect is that how do we reach out to the customer in a more engaging manner? I belong to insurance industry, which might not be as lucrative or as transaction oriented as most of the industry would be. So for example, if we talk about travel, we talk about hospitality or other industries, there would be a lot of transactions that a customer would be doing with you. You have that time or you have that kind of opportunities to attract that customer or to retain by having a continuous conversation established. But life insurance is one-time kind of engagement with the customer where first of all, point of sale, you will sell an insurance or a product, then obviously renewals will happen. It usually tends to take a backseat in the customer's mind. So hyper-personalization for us is of utmost importance. Why? Because if as a consumer I feel that this particular brand cares for me, I am highly likely to renew with this brand again and continue with my policy. So we experimented with this kind of thing with our celebrity-based, hyper-personalized campaigns. You would have seen the Shah Rukh Khan Cadbury ad campaigns and all of those stuff. Based on those lines only, we also started experimenting with that, where we had two of our celebrities do hyper-personalized campaigns for our customer at the onset of their renewal duration. So their renewal dates comes in, we started doing that, and we saw an uplift around 30% in the click-through rates, which is humongous when we talk about a mass media like maybe email or WhatsApp kind of targeting to the customers, 30% click-through rate and 10 to 12% conversion in the renewal premium payment. So that's the power of generative AI that we are talking about. How do I get the right attention at the right time from the customer is what generative AI can enable for us. Like you would have been hearing about that it can create content, it can create audio, video and all of those things. The opportunity lies in how can we create fast, how can we localize, personalize and reach out to our customers even faster than we were doing previously.
Thank you, Divyan. So I think, when Shakti and Divyan both were talking, we can clearly understand that, we can apply the generative AI and ML depending on the consumer journey or let's say the stage of the brand funnel. What it clearly does is to improve the mental availability of the brand. Now coming to the top of the funnel where you actually build the memory structure of the brand in the consumer brain, there also, it's very important that, whether we can apply AI, ML technique in terms of creating or thinking the right creative in the right direction, right? And what, Divyan has talked about the attention, I think all the brands and all the marketeers and the practitioners, we are striving for the attention of the consumers. So that's also very important. Now my next question would be to Nitendra. I would request your point of view on the creative exploration. How generative AI can assist marketers to explore the new creative ideas and concepts, breaking from the traditional approaches.
Sure. thanks for that question, Aravindo, and it's getting harder, I must say, to both of you. Chandrasekhar, Shakti, and Divyan have covered a lot in that space. But let me talk about three specific things from the creativity perspective that we would look at, and I'm looking at a very macro view of things, okay? So first thing, I'm going back 200 years. In 1830, the first train started in Britain. It went from Liverpool to Manchester. In 1847, they figured out that there needs to be a timetable which needs to be followed by trains and so on. 17 years later, so the British Railways came up with a timetable that what time would the train start from Liverpool, what time should it reach Manchester, and so on. When they had the timetable, they realized that the clocks at the two places do not really match, because there was no such communication that could have told that by this time, the time here is this, and by the time the time is there, right? So when the train started to fly in, that's when they realized that there has to be some concept of a common timing for those. 1860 is when the British government actually introduced the concept of the Greenwich Mean Time, which now we all use it, and then we synchronize our clocks and so on, right? 30 years it took to come up with a concept that, okay, now these clocks need to be synchronized. Time is getting ruthless. None of us have as much time either as businesses or as actually human beings either, right? We cannot wait that 30 years to realize that clocks need to be synchronized and so on. A very good example from a marketing perspective is that 20 years earlier, the amount of investment in digital marketing was almost nil. And here we are, 70% of the investment of organizations actually happens in digital marketing rather than in the physical world, right? So this is how we have changed significantly in 20 years. So that's the second point. We shrink the timeline again. The third point is, interestingly, during COVID times, my house is like in front of a market, so I could see things at the market. So it had the first row of the market which had shops before COVID, and those shops used to be of eateries, of a clothing store, of a makeup store, and so on and so forth. As and when COVID continued to progress month after month after month, those shops closed and new shops came in. And guess which shops came in? Obviously, everyone was working from home. People were taking Zoom calls. So, shops which had all the mobile accessories with those lights, those ring lights and so on. A lot of you would have bought those kind of things, some Bluetooth stuff, some better earphones and all that type of stuff. Those shops came in. That is also okay. But the other shops that came in were also very, very smart people. Shops which had the opticians and the lenses and the glasses and so on. I hope not, but definitely for me, during the COVID time, my eyesight did reduce because we were spending a lot of time on the screens and watching the screen rather than going to offices and all of that type of stuff. Because of which this happened, because of which eventually there were people who were smart enough that the need for these things are going to be there, and therefore they put their shop in the front row, which gets more eyeballs and so on and so forth, right? This is what we need to think as marketeers. That is why the name of this panel is actually a game changer. It's not just one yet additional tool instead of something else. Now we use Adobe or whatever and so on and so forth, right? It is going to change the game because the society that is consuming content these days is changing. The society that used to consume, that used to walk out and then get food every day and so on, versus the society that is now, which orders food online. And by the way, there are studies that actually show that our eating patterns changed during COVID times and then they continued, which means very few of us used to go, a lot of us used to go to the restaurants to eat food, and a few of us would order at home. During COVID time, this pattern changed. People started to order more, and that has continued even now. So now the general habit is that let me order more. So the ordering restaurants and those kind of things have increased significantly and all that, right? Now as marketeers, what we need to think is that what is it that's going to change in this society in the age of Gen AI? What kind of people are going to be created? And as Divyan rightly mentioned, This is the population which has a very low attention span, which has happened perhaps because there are too many choices to switch. You can quickly switch channels and all that type of stuff. From a Gen AI perspective, the kind of generation that is going to come is the generation that asks questions on ChatGPT, right? Rather than me asking a question to you or to you or to you, I would just ask a question to ChatGPT because it will give me an answer. So others are not going to get the opportunity to give an answer. We as human beings are going to be becoming very good at asking questions. Who is going to answer? ChatGPT. So now we are getting into the generation which does not know how to answer. That's the generation that you need to kind of address. I don't know how you marketeers are better, but we need to realize that the whole society is in some sense changing, and therefore our ways of interacting with them, our ways of generating the content to them is not to that same human who was there 20 years earlier. It is going to be at a very different level. Those human beings are different. So the things that we create for them is what we need to start thinking of. And those are the ones, the marketeers, who are actually able to identify this big shift which is happening very slowly under the covers, and one day it will change into a huge wave. The marketeers who are able to identify this big wave is going to come, they are the ones in some sense who are going to make changes and big waves in this whole society. So I think that's the creative part of the marketing, is what we need to question ourselves, in addition to all the stuff that was mentioned here.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Nitendra. So in a nutshell, you know, earlier days we used to wait for years and years to understand that what are the trends, and we used to call very passionately that I have identified certain emerging trends, but by the time we identified them, they are already emerged, right? So this thing are not going to happen. So we are going to, the tool is going to help us understanding the real emerging trends, and we have to, I mean, the responsibility, the onus is on us, that how we can actually utilize them for our marketing purpose. Now, coming to Piyush, you can't blame me for asking the same question, okay? And I'm going to ask really a different question. Typically, you know, the question, in a proposal which comes in the last page of a proposal, and typically we see at the beginning, we start from the last page, right? That what is the cost and what is the savings? Right, so do you foresee any kind of opportunity of significant cost savings, or let's say a significant uplift in the efficiencies of the marketing investment?
Sure, especially like, so both, so cost and saving goes, right, so with consumption, right, so if you do a Google search, and people have been talking about like, so ChatGPT, right, so think of on the hardware and resources side of it, you would have increased more carbon footprint and more consumption as compared to like, so if you have just Googled and applied your brain to look for that answer itself. But jokingly, right, so on the other side of it, and like, so fellow panelists have already talked about, right, so it is going to be truly game changer, both in terms of automation and then be able to like give you good amount of cost saving, and then total TCO or ROI, if you need to look through, right? So it is going to be on net positive side. So, and hence, I would not like scare you with like dollar bills from Microsoft, Google, etc. from either usage of those things. But yeah, people are getting creative on the technology side of it as well, right? So they are, rather than just relying on to massive large language models only, right? So, fellow panelists talked about, right, so utilizing your own data, right, so we are leveraging both the things, right, so like he mentioned, right, so you have, since the company started, right, so you have good amount of data and some insights, and you are trying to leverage both, because that is only going to give you a added advantage in terms of brand tonality and rest of the things, because that is what the brand stands for, right? People don't come to Make My Trip for random things, right? So they associate a brand and then do a lot of things. And like, so in last November, right, so when ChatGPT kickstarted to now, right, so I hope, right, so many of you are aware of like, so Google announcement with Gemini, right, so, and they have now made Gemini Pro as the default for Bard as well. So if you go to bar.google.com, so the model behind the scene is Gemini Pro. And the capability is primarily on the multi-model side of it, right? So over the period of time, right, so we would see good journeys in terms of what has been achieved. Primarily from brand standpoint, right, so on Make My Trip, some learnings I would share quickly with some use cases probably like that would resonate well. So one, we talked about heavily on the content generation part of it, yeah, and we utilized similar capabilities as we started with yet another tool, and then like we saw massive issues primarily, right? So now you need to deal with enormous amount of templates, they need to be reviewed because like, so you can't just throw out like, so whatever has been generated by ChatGPT, etc. in front of customers because like, so at the end of the day, you don't want to screw the customer experience because like, so you are cool, you are using generative AI and rest of the things, right? So you need to go through that processes, and we saw massive issues initially, and then slowly like, so when we fine-tuned a lot of stuff, we utilizing along with our data. So there are two key techniques, right? So one is RAG and another is fine-tuning the model. So we explored both the things. And the use cases which we started working primarily was on content generation, summarization, and conversational AI. So I hope, right, some of you would have played with Myra, which is our chat expert primarily. The opportunity which we saw was combination of generative AI with primarily like so voice-based, like so utilizing speech to text and text to speech models here. And the opportunity for primarily like so internally like so we said that's going to be internal code name was BharatBot, primarily to address tier 3, tier 4. It was like so not just the language translation part of it, because like so humans like to converse, right? And I'm picking a clue from my fellow panelists primarily, right? So many people are using ChatGPT, many people are using Bard, and there is still good amount of folks who still like to have a interface which is not yet built, right? So most of the interfaces which you interact regularly are built like funnels, right? So either typical form filling, and then you would see some results, you choose your products and then book or like buy it online, right? But typical, right, so in an offline world you see, right, so people having a two-way conversation, right? So in a setting where you reach out to a travel agent and say, okay, boss, I need to travel to my chacha house, etc. Yeah, he is living XYZ place, and do those kind of things. And with that story itself, right, so travel agent is able to make out, right, so what's the intent and the rest of the things, he is going with children and those kind of things. The capability of natural language understanding was much better with large language models and generative AI. And that is what I'm trying to like, so, give you, right, so our insight where we saw good upside in terms of rather than just leaving it to form filling, etc. We started like so having a conversational AI primarily where we saw all kind of queries from users. I'm traveling with my wife who is pregnant. Can I travel? Not travel? Is my children who is of so and so age going to get a seat in while traveling? To many other nuances, right? So apart from a traditional funnel which would give you a throughout some airline that you and which you need to choose and book your travel, right? So, and that is where we are seeing. And the second part which I just like talked about briefly was primarily like the opportunity which lies primarily in tier 3, tier 4 Janta to have a conversation primarily in their native language or everyday usage of language itself. That may be a mix of combination of 2-3 things. The challenge which we saw primarily on the generative AI and the opportunity part of it, and hence to solve primarily, was most of the large language models are trained on textbooks or what is out there in public domain, right? And that is not the language which we speak, right? So even at home, right? So if we, with our spouses, we are not typically speaking in our textbook language, right? So, and hence the opportunity all around primarily, right, to solve in many ways, utilize human creativity, create data, right? So rather than just be a user of or a consumer of ChatGPT, be a value creator in terms of, right? So in many ways, you could just tag the data, annotate certain things. So create primarily like, so one part of it, right, data which can be truly annotated and be leveraged within the organization by building your own large language model, and which will internally give you initially, obviously, some addition of cost, etc., I would say, but for long run, it is going to be massive game changer, truly, like for the organization to be able to solve nuances of both your customer and improve your customer experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, thank you, Piyush. Now we'll talk a little bit about the pitfalls of the entire thing, and a small time check. I think we have 8 to 10 minutes in our hand, so we need to go a slide quickly. My question is to Ravindra. We understand that data is at the core of generative AI. I mean, all of you have mentioned that how much data intensive and what are the kind of training that is required to build the right kind of AI process. Now, being a practitioner, what would be your point of view on potential data issues and its implication on the model?
Sure. So with the advent of Gen AI, one thing is for sure, right? It's making the job easier for marketers to kind of build their content, create their campaigns. Now, and that's being done by some ML model, right? Or Gen AI model. So fundamentally, these models are only as good or as bad as the data they are trained on, right? Now think about you creating campaigns and it somehow has some sort of a bias. It's not inclusive to all groups that are there, right? Or there could be certain stereotypes which this model is spitting, right? It could easily kind of dampen your brand image, or your campaign could turn sour, right? So these are the kind of problems that you might fall into if you just blindly start using these technologies without knowing about the pitfalls, right? Now, how do you avoid or maybe plan for arresting these kind of pitfalls, right? So I'll talk about maybe 3-4 steps how you can do this, right? One is you kind of collect your data from different diverse sources, right? So that it represents all sort of like groups. It's very inclusive to every group or every kind of behavior, right? So that's one. Beyond that, typically what ML practitioners they do to remove biases are like they also try to do some audits. So there are audit tools like open source audit tools. IBM has, Google has it, Microsoft also provides it, right? In general, I think data science community has these kind of tools available to kind of remove the biases, right? So first you need to find out what sort of biases are existing. Once you know what all biases are there, then there are certain strategies that you can do to kind of remove it, right? From your data, from your model. So one strategy that people apply in terms of pre-processing and cleaning the data is once they know about the biases which exist, they can sort of remove those biases by either removing those samples altogether or oversampling the minority kind of data points, right? So these are the kind of ways you can do this, or you can maybe give more weights to minority sort of observations rather than the majority, right? So these are the ways in which you tackle data pre-processing to remove the biases, right? Once you have done your pre-processing, there is still the model to be trained, right? So within the model also, people try to, before training the model, they would change the objective function in such a way that your biases are curved a lot, and whatever the model is going to spit out, it's basically, it has removed all sort of stereotypes and non-inclusivity, right? So these are the things that people try to remove the biases, right? Now beyond this, I think these are again going to work only for the biases which are known to you or which your tools are able to tell you, right? But there are certain other sort of biases which keeps developing over time, right? And to solve for that, I think there is no right answer or easy answer. I think you need to keep repeating the process that I described, right? In terms of cleaning your data or fine-tuning your models again and again, right? So that's the way I think the practitioner should kind of set their processes to make sure that the models are devoid of the biases that exist.
Yeah, thank you. So I would request Shakti, if you can please add on something if you feel onto it.
Sure. So, as the fellow panelist mentioned, I mean, Gen AI is all based on, or any AI model is based on data. So, like, just to give you a perspective, our Chat GPT version 3, that is trained till, I think, September of 21 data, and like it has used, I think, in excess of 15 to 20 petabytes of data. And what you will see is, depending on the question you ask, you may get a very biased answer, right? Because the data that was used to train the model was biased in itself, So there is a whole concept of like responsible AI that comes into play. And in order to train the model with your data, it will be best if you have a diverse team, with diversity in gender, diversity in race, in ethnicity and all that, who actually prepares the data to like train the model. So that is a must. And the other thing is that you find shortage of data, so like there could be minority of data. Here there are techniques like, as I mentioned earlier, there's something called collaborative filtering. If I want to sell a product to a person who has never bought it, how do I sell it to that person, right? So there is something called likelihood, I mean, you can link items together, you can link people together, you can generate data using GAN, generative adversarial networks, that will generate false data for you. That is, I mean, that is the same algorithm that is behind deepfakes, right? So it can also generate fake data for you. So all these techniques, I mean, like, can be used. But one challenge, one thing is that we are learning as we go along. Like, for example, when we handle data analytics, there is something called, I mean, data governance, right? Data rationalization, data linear. There is a whole Bible behind best practices in data. For AI, we are evolving. I do not know, whatever I'm doing right now, is that effective, right? Is this the right way to go? So, like, a lot of learning will happen that way along the way.
Yeah, thank you. So Chandra, would you like to, add anything in terms of the importance of transparency and explainability of the model?
Yeah, sure. So there are two critical aspects of any AI model if you train. I mean, Mary, my fellow panelists talked about if there are biases in data. For example, if your model predicts that a black guy is criminal always, or it's biased towards that, or a fair guy not in US, typically in US by US standards. If your data is trained on those kinds of data set where something biased, or for example, take females are more prone to buy something. If your majority of data points like that, then your output would be even biased towards even females, or maybe who are shown as criminals. Definitely this is at one go. But there is one interesting guidelines by OECD, that's AI Observatory, and they have mentioned 4 things. One, you should foster a culture for general AI, for transparency. I mean, whatever you have built as a model, whatever it's like Google or Bard or maybe ChatGPT, but it should have the transparency in terms of, it should have fostered the culture, that's one. 2, whoever is interacting with that model, whoever, it's you, me, anyone, whoever is interacting, those are called stakeholders. These stakeholders should be made aware of what they are using. 3rd, anybody who would be impacted by that outcome. It means if as a marketer you are using those outputs, or anybody else, I mean, think if a lawyer or maybe anybody else, whoever is being impacted by the output of those open AI or maybe Gen AI outputs, they have the right and they should be made available those informations that what are this. 4th, and that the most critical point, if anybody is impacted by those outputs adversely, then they have the right to question you and know what are the logic and what are the data points being used to train the model. This is a very critical point. In the context of DPDP, which we all have, data protection right, which gives us the right to ask questions and get our data being deleted. With Gen AI, there is nothing like that. If your data is being used to train a model, you cannot delete it. So the transparency lies on the data. What kind of data points you are going to train or build your model on, whether it's biased, unbiased, and how you can prune those data points. So I give you an example. So Mahindra, Tech Mahindra is trying to build one chat GPT kind of stuff, but on Indian data set, Indian languages, Hindi and Marathi, Bengali, and all those things. They have collected over 1.4 TB of data from all sources around, and they have manually annotated over 14 GBs or a bit more data. It's a humongous task. If we are trying to collect the data points which are legal, which are not biased, and even though if you have trained and the output is biased, how you are going to correct it? These are the things which we have come across, transparency and ethics. So this is what my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think our time is up. So let me just summarize, the discussion where we have started from. There are a lot of myths, a lot of stories associated with it. But what I clearly understand, I believe that kind of feeling is there with you as well, that what is humanly possible, impossible, maybe the generative AI and ML together can help us to do that direction. It can do the level, I think I'm very optimistic, it can do the level of 60 to 70%, and then we have to beat AI and ML with our human intelligence, right? It's something like, Gary Kasparov or Vishwanathan Anand is playing chess against a computer, and they had the record of beating the computer. And that's the way we'll move much faster towards the, the newer generation of marketing. To this end, I'd like to thank all the panelists, and if you have any question, I'm opening the session. If you have any question to our respective panelists.
We are planning to use ChatGPT for the
Not a bad idea, please do that. Yeah, you have a question.
So one point very clearly coming out is that Gen AI is going to finish off the creator community. Is that right? I mean, if corporates are going to look for doing Gen AI based work, which means all writing work, all advertising work, all campaign planning, all videos, all artwork to be done based on Gen AI, then does it actually mean a doom for creators, or do you think that creators need to find a new way forward?
Sure. Way back when the printing press came, that time there was this similar question being asked by, for the folks who used to do calligraphy type of stuff, right? That printing press is going to kill our creativity and so on. And there was a lot of resistance from some regions in the globe, and the others actually took the printing press forward, and then they adopted it and so on and so forth. And the creativity kind of translated from me being able to write it using my hand to all the fonts and so on that were discovered. I'm not going to name that particular region, but they are the ones who actually could not move forward 40 years down the line, and they are still in some sense dependent on the oils of the world and so on and so forth, right? So I think the idea is not that it's going to kill the creativity from that perspective, but it's more about now that there is this new and a very efficient tool, how do we utilize it and upskill ourselves so that we make use of it to make ourselves more efficient, rather than saying that, oh, okay, I need to close my shop because this other stuff has come in. And there have been, history has shown that there are significant consequences if we do not adopt or if we do not ride a huge wave.
So would like to also give a small input here. Like for example, there are customers whom we work with who make it very mandatory to us to tell us, we would not like you to use ChatGPT because, hey, we can do that ourselves too. So we would like to have original research, original data, original working on whatever you're doing, rather than just coming forward and actually, taking things from here and there. Said, we can do it ourselves. So, I mean, I just want to give the other side of it too, which is actually happening with many customers, because they feel that if that's the case, then why do we need you in the first place?
See, here, one thing I want to mention is regarding creativity, you cannot simply ask a question and get a great answer, from all these LLM models. There's something called prompt engineering. You have to ask the right question. You have to give the right details. The right paragraph has to be there to get the response of your liking. That's where I think a lot of creativity is going to come in. And also, like all the images, are they original or not? There are so many machine learning algorithms, and as I mentioned, you can create a lot of deep fakes, right? Those images will look original. And so the content is going to look original. It's not that like it has been trained on an image, so it's going to spit out that image. No, I'm like, that's not how it works.
So one last question is, does it also have any bearing then on intellectual property rights in terms of content which you own, or if it's going to spit out the same kind of content to 3 different people, the question is who owns it?
I'm not sure, I guess a legal expert could respond to that, but yes, it will not be your responsibility who's using the model, but whoever has trained the model has to be able to justify using the data that it has used.
So when we talk about specifically on this question of IPR protection and all, when we are using licensed tools, like I mentioned Jasper or Copy, and leveraging those for that, IPR resides with you. Specifically, if we talk about the tools that we are creating using the generative AI solution, maybe Azure or the Googles of the world, what they have started doing is to provide you a IPR protection, that whatever you create through this, we will help you, support you in case an IPR suit is filed on you. So obviously it's still building up. We are in the initial stages, but at least what these companies which are working on this is doing is they are protecting you for any kind of defamation or legalities which are involved in the contents that you are creating. So at least we can start using it, and maybe things will maybe streamline or will come into limelight at a later point in time. But at least these are the firms or the support these firms are providing to us in order to at least bring some of these things to the mainstreams.
Also, just wanted to add, right, so, and as Dr. Shakti said, right, so at the end of the day, right, so you are writing a prompt to fetch a response from a large language model, right? So, and that's not it, right? So at the end of the day, whatever, be it the content which you have created, would have some nuggets, if, for example, so some insights which you have added from your experiences, etc. The data you would have, not you said, right, so the organization can do it themselves, or 3 other would have the same response altogether. So the creativity needs to be both on on the prompt engineering part of it, plus utilizing the data, insights, etc., which you would have, so that the end customer experience or the content which you are thrown out to the customer is going to be really different from others. And hence, because you have added your data, etc., the IP relies, as he mentioned, with you itself.
Done. Something.
I have a take on this. So assume there is a Qutub Minar. You take one photograph of that building, if you call it building. I take, somebody else take. Picture looks like similar. We all post on social media. Looks like similar. Blue sky, everything fantastic, and then majestic building. One algorithm can learn from those images and create a similar fourth image. Now, it's very difficult to tell who owns this. That's one. If you have plethora of image, it's pretty difficult. And the question of legality, of course, it will bring everyone into this, but it's very difficult to actually pinpoint if it's a pretty commonplace. That's one thing. Second thing about creativity. If you're trying to build creativity is has many connotations. And even the intelligence is. For example, for a child who is 5 years old, if it does something more than whatever general 5-year-old does not do, you will say he's intelligent, right? But that's not intelligent. Maybe anything which is beyond the trend, or maybe, for example, if you are creating a painting, some imagination, which is not the commonplace. I mean, if we are thinking of some, some sceneries, and you mix it with some abstract thinking, maybe that's a painting which is not done elsewhere earlier. Now, these kinds of imagination, still ChatGPT or Delhi, which is the counterpart of the image generation, has not done so far. Of course, they create majestic and beautiful, stunning images, but the creativity lies not just in terms of the prompt engineering, which means you have to be diverse and you have to punch in those keywords too many times, and it should be collage of all those imaginative words. That's one, which is creative on your part. But imagination, creativity also lies on which is not there. Whatever machine does, it can create, marvelous, or maybe lighting or shade, amazing, it will look like stunning. But even when you have to create a new thing which is not there, remember, this is a machine which you have learned, which you have, I mean, if you said 2, he said 4, he said 5, he learned it, and it will spit out something like this if you ask next time. And maybe it will mix and match. That's all it's great at. It will mix and match and create, something stunning. To you, it might look stunning at that point in time, because it's a 5-year-old who was told to do something, but it was commonplace, but he's something else. It's stunning, it's imaginative, it's creative. Same thing. If machine can mix and match to the extent that it looks commonplace, you will say, okay, accept. But if it does something else, which is accepted and as treated like a marvelous or maybe great thing, or great article, or great video, or great image, that's the creativity. And there, I don't think as of now, machine can beat us as of now, but definitely future to tell.
So don't think of it as a replacement. Think of it like what Microsoft talks about, right? Which is Copilot, which is more of a design thinking. So Copilot is not replacement, right? It is going to be there along with you to do certain tasks. So think through that rather than thinking of a replacement. Yeah.